Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show where we take stacks of sources, pull out the key insights, and lay them out just for you. Today, we're diving into something pretty heavy, actually. It's this argument that humanity is really at a critical point. We're facing these huge global economic crises, environmental problems, and according to our source today, the very real threat of a World War III. So our mission here is to unpack the ideas from Paramendra Kumar Bhagat's work, World War III is Unnecessary. Think of this as helping you connect the dots between our economic systems, past wars, environmental damage, and this idea of societal decline that the author says is pushing us towards disaster. And the core argument we'll explore is pretty bold, that World War III is avoidable and there's a radically different path we could take.
Exactly. And what's fascinating about this source is it's not just about stopping a war, though that's obviously critical. It pushes us to look deeper, at the systemic problems it claims are driving us towards catastrophe. And it connects these really modern issues to something ancient, this concept of moral decline called the Kali Yuga from Hindu cosmology. We'll get into how the author argues we're in this age, and how this thing called the Kalkiist Manifesto is proposed as a way out, a real transformation, not just a quick fix.
Right. And this isn't just abstract theory, is it? These ideas, they hit close to home. Global stability, your own well-being, the future of the planet. It's all connected. This deep dive might really challenge how you think about global problems, about what solutions are even possible. So buckle up. Let's get started.
Let's do it.
Okay, section 1, the inherent cycle. Capitalism, conflict, and crisis. Let's kick things off with a claim that might make some people uncomfortable. The source says capitalism, even while it drives growth, is at the heart of many global conflicts. How does the author argue that? How does competition turn into conflict?
It's really central to the whole argument. The source defines capitalism, the basics: private ownership, free markets, chasing profit. And while, yes, competition can lead to good things, efficiency, innovation, the author argues that when it's unchecked, this competition breeds intense rivalries and conflicts. The core issue, as presented, is that this relentless drive for profit and market dominance often pushes aside ethical considerations and social welfare. Profit becomes the main goal, sometimes the only goal.
And that can set the stage for tension, for conflict.
Precisely. Values like stability or even just basic human well-being can get sidelined.
And the source points to history, right? It draws a line from this capitalist drive to actual wars like World War I.
Yeah, very directly. It argues the big European powers back then were fundamentally driven by capitalist ambitions. They wanted to expand empires, control global markets. Think of it like this huge economic game. The competition for resources, markets, political influence, it played a significant role in sparking the war.
So it wasn't just nationalism and alliances.
Those were there, definitely. But this source says underlying it was this economic engine. The Industrial Revolution had made these nations fiercely competitive, and that fueled this aggressive race for colonies, for raw materials, cheap labor, places to sell their goods. This created a really volatile situation. Conflict was almost inevitable, the author contends.
Wow. Okay, so then World War II, often seen as growing out of the first one. How does capitalism fit in there, according to the source?
Well, the argument is that WWII was deeply rooted in economic turmoil and nationalist fervor, left over from WWI. You had the Treaty of Versailles, which slapped these really harsh economic penalties on Germany. It wasn't just punishment. It was meant to cripple them economically.
Which created resentment, instability.
Huge amounts. And then, boom, the Great Depression of the 1930s hits globally. Economies were collapsing. This chaos, combined with nationalism, was fertile ground for fascist regimes: Germany, Italy, Japan. And their drive for economic revival and national glory involved aggressive militarism. They needed resources, oil, land, and they aimed to take them by force. Economic dominance was a key goal.
So even ideology aside, it comes back to economics. What about the Cold War? That always felt like pure ideology, capitalism versus communism.
The source argues that even then, economic competition was a fundamental driver. Yes, it was ideological, but it was also about securing spheres of economic influence. This rivalry showed up in the massive arms race, pouring money into weapons, and in all those proxy wars: Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Latin America. These were often fought under ideological banners, sure, but frequently the goal was securing resources, trade deals, or stopping the other economic system from expanding. Economics and ideology were tangled together.
So history gives us this pattern. Does the source see it repeating now? Is the threat of World War III really driven by these same dynamics today?
That's exactly the warning. The source states, the threat of World War III looms large, driven by the same capitalist dynamics. It points right at the intensifying economic competition among major powers, especially the U.S. and China.
We see that everywhere. Trade wars.
Trade wars, yeah, technological rivalries over AI, chips, you name it.
Yeah.
And these geopolitical disputes over resources and influence. The South China Sea, critical minerals. The source is blunt. The capitalist system's inherent drive for profit maximization and market expansion often overlooks the long-term consequences, like environmental damage and social inequality.
It creates instability.
Exactly. This short-sightedness fuels global warming, depletes resources, leads to social unrest. It's a volatile mix. The argument isn't just that economics matters, but that this relentless profit motive is the engine driving us toward potential collapse.
Okay, so beyond the risk of war, what are the other big downsides, the source links to this unchecked capitalism? It sounds like a pretty damning critique.
It really is. The source goes into the environmental cost in quite some detail. It argues that industrial activities driven by profit are the main culprits behind pollution and climate change. Burning fossil fuels, deforestation, industrial waste.
The usual suspects.
Right. And these directly lead to global warming, habitat destruction, biodiversity loss. The source even says global warming is a direct result of capitalist exploitation of natural resources. Think rising seas, extreme weather, deserts spreading.
And it's not just big industry. Our consumption habits play a role too.
Oh, absolutely. Capitalist emphasis on consumerism gets called out specifically. This constant push for more stuff, often designed to break or become obsolete.
Planned obsolescence.
Yeah. It leads to massive waste generation and resource depletion. Think fast fashion, huge water pollution, emissions, or electronic waste, leaching toxic stuff into the ground. It critiques the system's reliance on constant, unsustainable growth.
And food production. Industrial agriculture.
That's heavily implicated too. These industrial farming methods, pushing for maximum yields and profit, often rely heavily on chemical fertilizers, pesticides. This leads to soil degradation and water pollution. Plus, planting huge areas with just one crop, monoculture, reduces biodiversity, makes a whole system more vulnerable.
And this environmental damage then creates social problems. How does that connection work?
It's a crucial link. The source notes that environmental harm, quote, disproportionately affects the poorest and most vulnerable communities. Think about it. Rising seas displace coastal populations, droughts cause crop failures and water wars. Climate disasters hit poorer nations hardest.
Right, they have fewer resources to cope.
Exactly. This leads to social unrest and conflict over scarce resources. Water, food. So environmental costs become social costs, especially for marginalized groups.
That's sobering. Okay, let's shift to the economic side. How does the source say capitalism creates or worsens economic inequality? We hear about wealth creation, but this sounds like the opposite effect.
It definitely focuses on the divisive side. The source argues the benefits of capitalism are unevenly distributed. It uses that stark Oxfam stat. The richest 1% own more than twice as much wealth as 6.9 billion people.
Wow.
This extreme concentration of wealth is presented as a direct cause of social unrest and political instability. When huge numbers of people feel left out, exploited, the system itself becomes unstable.
And how does this play out for regular workers in the job market?
Well, the source explains that in a purely capitalist setup, wages are mostly set by supply and demand, not necessarily fairness. So low-skilled workers, or those in jobs with lots of available labor, often get low wages, barely enough to live on. Meanwhile, specialized skills command huge salaries, big disparity. This also points to the gig economy, a product of modern capitalism. Lots of workers lack job security, benefits, fair wages. Companies get flexibility, workers get vulnerability.
And it's not just about earned income, right? It's about wealth itself creating more wealth.
Precisely. The source puts it simply, wealth begets more wealth. If you have capital assets, investments, you can make more money, often passively. If you don't have that starting capital, it's incredibly hard to save, invest, break the cycle. This concentration of capital means economic power ends up in the hands of a very few.
And that economic power translates to political influence.
That's the feedback loop. They can influence political and economic policies to their advantage, favoring the wealthy, making it even harder for others.
Does this also affect basic things like getting good health care or education?
Profoundly, the source argues. In many capitalist societies, quality education and healthcare are often determined by one's economic status. The wealthy can afford the best, while others rely on underfunded public systems. This perpetuates poverty cycles across generations, limiting opportunity.
What about the financial sector itself? The source mentioned financialization and the 2008 crisis.
Right. Financialization is basically when making money from money through complex investments, speculation becomes more dominant than making actual things or providing services.
Okay.
The source argues this dominance of financial markets and speculative investments makes the system unstable and worsens inequality. Look at the 2008 crisis. Risky financial practices caused a global meltdown. Big institutions got bailed out, mostly recovered.
But ordinary people.
Ordinary people, especially low-income individuals and communities, suffered massively. Job losses, foreclosures, long-term hardship. The wealth gap widened. The argument is the system creates huge risks and the costs fall on the most vulnerable.
Okay, so that paints a picture of the systemic issues. Let's move to section 2, the brink of catastrophe. Why war isn't the answer. What's the immediate snapshot? The source suggests multiple crises are hitting us all at once right now.
Yeah, the sense of urgency is palpable in the source material. Economically, it points to this growing income and wealth disparity. That Oxfam stat, again, 1% owning twice as much as 6.9 billion people. This is seen as a huge destabilizer, fueling social unrest and political instability. Then there's unemployment and underemployment, made worse by automation and the gig economy, leaving millions insecure. And the COVID-19 pandemic really exposed the fragility of global supply chains and led to massive debt accumulation, creating long-term worries about stability.
So the economy's shaky. What about the environment? You mentioned it's framed as an existential threat.
It is. The environmental picture is described as equally dire, maybe more so. Climate change is the big one, an existential threat. The IPCC keeps warning we're near irreversible tipping points. We need drastic emission cuts now to avoid catastrophe.
And we're already seeing the effects.
Absolutely. More frequent and severe weather events, hurricanes, droughts, floods, devastating impacts. Beyond climate, there's biodiversity loss. That WWF report showing a 68% decline in wildlife since 1970, that's staggering. It threatens the ecosystems we depend on.
Like pollination, clean water.
Exactly. And finally, plastic pollution. Around 8 million tons pouring into oceans each year, harming marine life, getting into our food chain via microplastics. It's a mess.
So, with all these crises boiling, the source warns about World War III becoming a real possibility. If that happened, what would the cost actually be?
The source outlines truly horrific consequences. First, the human cost. It's unimaginable. Modern weapons, especially weapons of mass destruction. The potential loss of life is staggering. And the nuclear weapons threat looms large. Even a limited exchange could kill millions instantly. Plus radiation causing long-term suffering.
And a full-scale nuclear war.
Could trigger nuclear winter. Dust and smoke block sunlight, temperatures plummet, global agriculture collapses leading to widespread famine. Large parts of the planet could become uninhabitable.
Just catastrophic. What about the economic fallout?
It would be devastating. War instantly diverts immense resources from productive things to the military. Infrastructure gets destroyed, trade stops, economies destabilize. The global economy, already fragile, might just completely collapse. We could face a prolonged depression, high unemployment, widespread poverty, social unrest. It would set humanity back decades, maybe centuries.
In the environment. We're already struggling.
A global conflict would be the nail in the coffin. Severe consequences. Even conventional war causes deforestation, habitat destruction, pollution.
Wow.
But nuclear weapons, they'd contaminate large areas with radiation for decades, maybe longer. It would massively exacerbate the existing environmental crises, pushing ecosystems beyond recovery.
Okay, this is where the source brings in that concept we mentioned earlier, the Kali Yuga. What is it, and why does the author argue that even a devastating war wouldn't end it?
Right, this is where the spiritual dimension really comes in. According to Hindu cosmology, the Kali Yuga is the current age we're living in, an age of moral and social decline. It's characterized by strife, corruption, dishonesty, a general breakdown of values. Greed, anger, delusion become dominant.
And some might think a huge war could, cleanse the world, start fresh.
Exactly. The source directly addresses that idea that a cataclysm could somehow reset things. But it argues the exact opposite.
It would make it worse.
Precisely. A big war inherently perpetuates the very qualities that define the Kali Yuga. Violence, hatred, fear, destruction. It amplifies these negative traits, doesn't eliminate them. War doesn't solve the underlying moral problems, it deepens them, creates more cycles of revenge and suffering.
And the aftermath isn't usually peace and enlightenment.
Rarely, if ever. It usually leads to a power vacuum, chaos, further instability, making any real progress towards peace or equity impossible. Just sows the seeds for future conflict.
So if war is counterproductive for ending this age of decline, what is needed?
The source insists the roots of the Kali Yuga are internal, deeply embedded in human behavior and societal structures. So the solution isn't external force, but internal and systemic fundamental transformation. Through introspection, education, and systemic change, cultivating better values, rebuilding society on ethical principles.
Which leads back to needing alternatives.
Exactly. A fundamental shift in our economic and social systems is needed to tackle these deep challenges. War just treats the symptoms violently. The source suggests our whole modern economic system, obsessed with material wealth, is a manifestation of the Kali Yuga, making this ancient concept startlingly relevant now.
Okay, let's get into that alternative. Section 3. The Kalkiist Manifesto, a radical path to peace. So if war is out, what's the proposed solution? This Kalkiist Manifesto sounds like a pretty radical departure.
It really is. The source presents it as a comprehensive blueprint for transforming society, aimed squarely at the root causes of moral and social decline, the Kali Yuga. It's positioned as a genuine path towards hope, tackling inequality, environmental destruction, social unrest at their source.
And the name Kalkiist that connects to the prophecy.
Correct. It's named after Lord Kalki, the prophesied 10th avatar of Vishnu in Hinduism, who is believed to bring an end to the Kali Yuga and restore righteousness, or dharma. So the manifesto has this spiritual underpinning aiming for a new era of peace and harmony, reflecting that vision of restoring higher values.
Who wrote it, and what's the absolute core, most radical idea?
It was authored by Jay Saw, and the core, undeniably radical proposal is a moneyless society.
Wow. Not just tweaking things, but getting rid of money altogether.
Exactly, a complete overhaul. In this vision, resources are allocated based on need rather than profit. This shift is presented as the absolute foundation for true peace, equity, and sustainability. It basically argues money itself is the problem.
So it rejects capitalism completely. What about socialism or communism? Do they get a pass?
Nope, the manifesto critiques them too. It argues that even systems aiming for equality, like traditional socialism or communism, still inherently perpetuate inequality, competition, and environmental harm. Why? Because they still tend to rely on monetary transactions, centralized power, or market forces in ways that can lead to their own problems, scarcity, inefficiency, even oppression. They don't get rid of the underlying issues of greed and competition fueled by resource economics, in the author's view.
So it's aiming beyond all current systems.
Right. The vision is that real peace and sustainability require transcending all these existing systems to something completely new, based on cooperation, shared responsibility, and respect for all life. A total paradigm shift.
That's huge. What are the foundational principles guiding this?
The source lays out 5 key principles, blending spiritual wisdom and ethics. First is nonviolence, ahimsa, but it's broader than just physical harm. It includes economic and environmental exploitation. The idea is, if you eliminate the profit motive, you reduce the drivers for conflict and exploitation, fostering cooperation instead.
So nonviolence becomes a systemic goal, not just personal behavior.
Exactly. Second is equity and justice. This is central, ensuring everyone has access to basic needs, food, shelter, healthcare, education. It means actively dismantling systems that concentrate wealth and power.
And sustainability must be huge, given the environmental crisis.
Absolutely. That's the third principle, sustainability. Recognizing planetary limits, it emphasizes practices that conserve natural resources, reduce waste, minimize environmental impact. Balancing human activity with nature is core.
How does it envision people organizing themselves?
That's principle 4, community and cooperation. A big shift from individualism to community-oriented living, promoting shared responsibility and collective action, with local communities working together democratically, building strong social ties.
And the last one ties back to the Kali Yuga.
Yes. The 5th principle is spiritual and ethical development. It stresses personal and collective spiritual growth, returning to ethical values, cultivating compassion, empathy, duty, overcoming selfishness and materialism. This spiritual dimension is seen as crucial for overcoming the Kali Yuga. The goal is a society where peace, justice, sustainability are just the norm.
Okay. Profound principles. How does the manifesto specifically propose to end the Kali Yuga's decline using these? What are the actual strategies?
Several key strategies are outlined. First, and the most radical, is abolishing money. The argument is money itself drives greed, inequality, conflict. Removing it eliminates incentives for exploitation. Resources get distributed by need. People contribute based on ability and passion, not for pay.
That fundamentally changes everything. How are decisions made without money or traditional power structures?
Which leads to the second strategy, decentralizing power. Centralized power, whether government or corporate, is seen as prone to corruption. Instead, it advocates for localized, participatory decision-making, empowering communities to govern themselves, decisions made by those affected.
And supporting those local communities would require local economies, right? Less global dependent.
Exactly. Third is promoting local economies. Developing self-sufficient, resilient local production and consumption reduces reliance on fragile, damaging global supply chains, makes communities more adaptable.
What about changing minds? Education must be key.
It's the fourth strategy, fostering education and awareness. Education needs to emphasize ethical values, environmental stewardship, community engagement, and raising public awareness about the possibility and necessity of a moneyless cooperative society is critical for building support. Shifting consciousness.
How would actual work get done? Production, services.
That's the fifth point. Implementing cooperative models. Widespread use of cooperatives in farming, manufacturing services promotes democratic decisions, equitable distribution, sustainable practices, shared ownership, collective benefit.
And there's a personal aspect, too, beyond structures.
Indeed. The sixth strategy is encouraging voluntary simplicity, choosing to live with fewer material things, focusing on well-being, community, meaning, reduces consumption and environmental impact. By combining all these, the manifesto aims to create a society that truly transcends the Kali Yuga's flaws, moving towards harmony, equity, and sustainability.
Let's try to really picture this, a moneyless society. It's so hard to wrap your head around. What would daily life actually look like?
It's the core vision, yet challenging that deep assumption that money is essential. The idea is resource allocation, based entirely on need, not ability to pay. So basics like food, shelter, healthcare, education are guaranteed for all. Poverty, homelessness theoretically eliminated.
How would that work practically? Like, how do you get food?
Imagine community hubs, maybe, where resources are shared and allocated based on need, managed transparently by the community, not priced. Communities collectively manage resources through participation. The market's gatekeeper role for essentials is gone.
Okay, but work. What motivates people, if not money? This is a big hurdle for many.
Work gets completely transformed. People wouldn't work primarily for wages. Instead, they pursue activities that use their talents, fulfill their passions, and contribute to the common good. Farming, crafting, teaching, healing, research, whatever contributes. The motivation shifts from financial reward to purpose, contribution, collective well-being. The manifesto argues our deepest drives are purpose and connection, not just money.
That sounds like you would automatically have huge environmental benefits, too.
Definitely. Without the profit motive driving overproduction and overconsumption, society could adopt more inherently sustainable practices. The focus shifts from profit to meeting needs while maintaining planetary health. Renewable energy, sustainable farming, waste reduction become intrinsic, not optional extras.
And social relationships. Without the financial pressures and class structures?
They'd be based on cooperation and mutual support, not competition. Removing financial barriers in the have-have-not dynamic could create a more inclusive and cohesive society, built on trust, respect, shared responsibility. You interact as humans, not based on economic status.
It sounds, well, utopian. Does the manifesto acknowledge how incredibly difficult this would be? The resistance, the cultural shifts?
Oh, absolutely. The source is clear. It would face significant challenges, huge resistance from entrenched interests who benefit now, and the massive need for widespread cultural and behavioral change overcoming our deeply ingrained materialism.
That sounds like the biggest hurdle.
It might be, but the manifesto argues it's not insurmountable. Through sustained effort in awareness, education, and demonstrating the benefits in smaller pilot projects, it's possible to build momentum. It's presented as a necessary, albeit monumental, undertaking for humanity.
All right, let's shift to Section 4, historical context and leadership's role. To really get the Kali Yuga, we need its origin story. The source mentions one about a king.
Yes, the story of King Parikshit and the Kali Purush. It's a key narrative from Hindu mythology, setting the stage. King Parikshit was a righteous ruler, descended from the Pandavas. He encounters the Kali Purush, the actual personification of the Kali Yuga, representing decay and corruption. Kali Purush is weak, hiding, and begs the king for a place to live in his kingdom as his time to rule was coming.
And the king, being good, tries to refuse, but eventually has to let him stay somewhere.
Exactly. Parikshit recognizes the danger, tries to banish him. But Kali Purush persists, saying it's his destiny. Reluctantly, the king grants him 5 specific places, and these places are symbolic. Gambling houses, places where liquor is drunk, places of illicit sex exploitation of women, slaughterhouses, and, critically, places where gold is hoarded.
And that act, giving vice a foothold, marks the start of the Kali Yuga. Wow.
That's the symbolic moment, the official onset of the Kali Yuga, the age of moral decline, greed, deceit. The story shows how time itself allows these negative traits to become dominant. The source adds the roots of the Kali Yuga were already there, in human tendencies like greed and lust. The Dvapara Yuga, before it saw values start to erode. Granting refuge symbolizes how these vices became normalized, even celebrated.
Okay, but why gold? Why is hoarding gold and by extension money so central to this age of decline?
Gold is the ultimate symbol of material wealth, right? So it's linked to greed and avarice. Its inclusion signifies the big shift from spiritual and moral values to materialism and self-interest. Hoarding gold represents the accumulation of wealth by a few, leading to inequality and strife. It undermines justice, breeds corruption.
So it's what the pursuit of wealth does to our values.
Precisely. The obsession with wealth distracts from spiritual growth, ethical behavior. Virtues like compassion, selflessness diminish. Society focuses on external gains over inner values. Money becomes a symbol and an accelerant of the Kali Yuga's defining traits.
So how does this ancient understanding connect to leaders today? Does the source see them caught up in this Kali Yuga dynamic?
Very much so. It critiques a lack of awareness among global leaders. Many seem unaware of or unwilling to consider truly transformative solutions beyond the current system. It's presented as a kind of blindness.
And it uses India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, as an example. What's the specific point there?
Right, Modi is used as a notable example. The source acknowledges his economic reforms, India's rising global profile. But it states his administration often overlooks innovative ideas that could transform society more fundamentally, specifically mentioning the Kalkiist Manifesto. The critique isn't that he's inactive, but that his focus stays within conventional frameworks, economic growth, geopolitics, which the source argues are insufficient for the scale of the crises, missed opportunities for deeper change.
And this isn't just about Modi, it's a wider issue.
Yes, the source stresses this is symptomatic of a broader issue. Many leaders worldwide are entrenched in traditional economic and political paradigms, the very paradigms argued to be causing the problems. This makes it hard to even see unconventional solutions, let alone embrace them, resulting in missed opportunities to tackle poverty, inequality, climate change more effectively. For instance, Modi's focus on traditional growth models while boosting GDP often comes at the expense of environmental sustainability and social equity, according to the source. Big projects might displace people or harm ecosystems, worsening the problems.
That's a tough critique. What about culture's role, like Bollywood in India? Does it help or hinder seeing alternatives?
Popular culture, like Bollywood, is seen as a powerful cultural force. And while it sometimes tackles social issues, the source notes it also often reflects and reinforces mainstream values, including capitalist ideals. Glamorizing wealth, success, consumerism can overshadow narratives about equity, sustainability, community. Creates a disconnect between themes explored and the pressing realities, potentially making people less open to radical ideas like the manifesto.
So even with concepts like Kalki, which have deep spiritual meaning, there's a gap. People see the myth, not the modern application.
Exactly. The idea of Lord Kalki ending the Kali Yuga is often seen purely mythologically. The source argues there's little consideration for its practical implications. Leaders, the source claims, fail to bridge this gap, not integrating these spiritual or ethical imperatives into governance. The focus on material progress obscures the deeper transformations needed, inadvertently keeping the Kali Yuga going. They're looking for solutions within the problem system.
Okay, Section 5. The path forward. Dialogue, awareness, and India's role. If leaders are stuck in old ways, how do we change that? What's the path forward, according to the source?
Effective communication and understanding between leaders and visionaries are crucial. That's presented as absolutely essential to move beyond just managing crises to actually solving them. Without dialogue, transformative ideas stay marginalized.
And it highlights that specific dialogue. Narendra Modi to engage with Jay Shah, the manifesto's author. Why is that meeting seen as so important?
Because Modi leads the world's largest democracy, has huge global influence. A dialogue with Shah would signal a real willingness to consider unconventional approaches. It would show leadership prioritizing social equity and environmental health over short-term economic gains. It could open minds, not just his, but globally, to radically different solutions.
What could be the ripple effect globally if that happened?
Potentially huge. The manifesto's principles, nonviolence, equity, sustainability, etc., align with what's needed for a peaceful world. If a leader like Modi were to endorse and advocate for these principles, even just by seriously engaging, it could inspire other nations, fostering a global culture of peace and collaboration. It would lend massive credibility.
So top-level dialogue is key. What about the rest of us? Awareness and education.
Awareness and education are fundamental. Equipping people with knowledge of the root causes of conflict, inequality, injustice, environmental damage is vital for finding real solutions. Public education campaigns, media, community engagement are needed to shift public perceptions away from the profit-driven mindset. The source also suggests putting Kalkiist principles into school curricula to raise a generation committed to these values.
And education can tackle the skepticism about radical ideas like a moneyless society.
Absolutely. Many will see it as impractical utopian. Education can help dispel these myths with evidence-based arguments and real-world examples of similar ideas working on smaller scales or historically, building confidence, showing it's not just fantasy.
So how do we practically make this shift happen? What are the concrete steps the source suggests?
It lists 7 practical steps. 1. Creating platforms for dialogue. Forums, conferences where leaders, visionaries, experts can talk openly.
Bringing different people together.
Right. 2. Promoting interdisciplinary collaboration, getting government, academia, business, civil society working together on solutions, diverse teams for complex problems.
Makes sense. What about nurturing the ideas themselves?
3. Supporting research and innovation, funding research into alternative economic models, cooperative structures, sustainable practices, creating innovation labs focused on transformation.
And getting the public on board.
4. Raising public awareness. Big campaigns using media, social platforms, community groups, getting influential figures involved to amplify the message.
How does awareness become policy?
5. Integrating ideas into policy. Policymakers need to be open to experimenting, piloting programs based on these ideas. Community resource management, maybe local currencies as a bridge, embedding equity and sustainability into laws.
What about action from the ground up?
6. Encouraging grassroots movements. Supporting local groups advocating for these principles builds momentum and demonstrates feasibility in practice.
And technology's role?
7. Leveraging technology. Using digital platforms for communication, resource sharing, online education about these ideas, making them accessible globally.
Now, the source singles out India. Why is India seen as having such a pivotal role in this potential transformation?
India's position is unique. It has this rich cultural heritage, historical significance, and emerging global influence. Plus, its deep-rooted spiritual traditions and historical emphasis on dharma, righteousness, make it culturally well-suited to embrace the manifesto's principles. These ideas aren't totally alien. They resonate with its history.
So India could be a living example for the world.
Exactly. If India could pioneer a new model prioritizing well-being over just material wealth, it would powerfully demonstrate the feasibility of a moneyless, cooperative society. Succeeding in such a large, diverse country would be a massive proof of concept.
And Modi's influence is still key here.
Yes, his leadership and India's global standing mean the country could spearhead transformative change. His endorsement, or even serious exploration, could galvanize support domestically and globally, using existing influence for a new direction.
What about India's geopolitical standing?
Its strategic position and role in international bodies give it leverage. It can use its diplomatic channels to advocate for the manifesto's principles, promoting global cooperation towards equity and sustainability, shifting the international focus.
And that link back to the Kali Yuga ending India's role there.
That adds profound weight. As the birthplace of these spiritual traditions, India adopting the manifesto could be seen as a contemporary manifestation of the spiritual vision to end the Kali Yuga. This could resonate deeply within India, mobilizing passionate support, framing it as fulfilling a spiritual destiny.
So how can India lead by example, practically?
Several ways outlined. Policy integration, putting principles into law. community-based resource management empowering local councils, education and awareness, nationwide campaigns, curriculum changes, pilot projects testing moneyless models regionally, sustainable development, massive investment in renewables, sustainable ag, waste reduction, international advocacy promoting the manifesto globally, and cultural promotion leveraging heritage to promote Dharma and community welfare.
Okay, let's move to the final section, Section 6, a vision for a moneyless future and call to action. Let's look ahead. If this Kalkiist system were adopted globally, what kind of world does the source project? What would life actually be like?
It paints a very hopeful picture, starkly different from the crisis scenarios, a world where resources are allocated purely based on need. Cooperation, shared responsibility, mutual support replace monetary systems. So what about economic fairness? Would it really work globally? Economic equity and social inclusion become foundational. Everyone gets access to basic necessities. By eliminating economic barriers and wealth gaps, it promotes deep inclusion, equal opportunity. The rich-poor divide basically disappears, creating a more just, harmonious society.
And the planet? What happens environmentally?
Sustainability becomes the absolute priority. The system encourages practices that minimize environmental impact and conserve resources. Renewables, regenerative agriculture, waste reduction become central. It aims to heal the planet, creating a symbiotic relationship with nature.
How would communities and relationships change?
Community and cooperation become the norm. Local councils manage resources collectively, fostering strong social bonds. People work together towards common goals. Competition gives way to mutual aid, leading to deeper connections.
Would innovation stop? Does a moneyless society mean stagnation?
The source argues the opposite. Freed from profit motives, people could pursue their passions more freely. This nurtures innovation and creativity. Work becomes meaningful and fulfilling. Tech advances would be guided by ethics and sustainability, benefiting all, not just generating profit.
And the ultimate goal, global peace?
By addressing the root causes inequality, resource competition, the Kalkiist system inherently reduces conflict. Promoting peace, mutual respect fosters global stability and harmony. Collaboration becomes the norm, making war an anomaly.
We started this whole discussion with the threat of World War III. What are the long-term gains if we actually avoid it by embracing something like this?
The benefits are immense. Obviously, the preservation of human life, avoiding unimaginable suffering. Then, economic stability and growth resources go to sustainable development, not destruction and rebuilding.
And for the environment?
Huge upside. Environmental protection. Avoiding war's damage allows us to focus on conservation, restoration, fighting climate change globally, ensuring a habitable planet. Plus, social cohesion and harmony, strengthening bonds, building trust instead of division.
And globally, what could humanity achieve?
An unprecedented era of global collaboration and progress. Nations could focus collective energy on shared challenges, climate, poverty, disease, knowledge. Shifting from competition to cooperation accelerates progress for everyone.
It's a comprehensive vision. How do we actually get from here to there? What's the roadmap again?
It's multi-pronged. Policy reforms globally. Community-led initiatives demonstrating feasibility from the ground up. Education and public awareness to shift values and build support. Technological innovation to enable new systems. Crucially, international cooperation and aligning with frameworks like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, for a unified approach.
So the source ends with a call to action. What's the final message for us, for leaders?
It's an urgent summary. The world's at a critical juncture facing massive crises. The Kalkiist Manifesto is presented as the transformative vision needed, equity, sustainability, cooperation, as the only way forward. It's a direct challenge to stick with the status quo.
And that specific appeal comes back?
Yes, that final, powerful appeal for Narendra Modi and Jay Shah to meet and collaborate, highlighting the need for visionary leadership to embrace revolutionary ideas. Ultimately, it stresses the collective responsibility to prevent World War III and end the Kali Yuga. It's presented as a shared opportunity for humanity to choose a fundamentally different, better path.
That idea of collective responsibility really resonates. This deep dive, it's shown these surprising links: our economy, war, the environment, even ancient prophecies. It's been a journey from understanding the deep roots of our problems to envisioning a solution that challenges, well, pretty much everything we take for granted.
And that leaves you, the listener, with something to really think about. If the systems we rely on might actually be driving us towards disaster, if ancient ideas about moral decay feel relevant today, what responsibility do you feel? What's our role in recognizing these roots in ourselves and society? And maybe more importantly, in seeking out or even starting to live the alternatives. What really stands out to you about this idea of distributing resources based on need, not profit? How might that change the conflicts and crises you see around you today?